Welcome to Black Hat Briefings, held November 21st through the 22nd, 2001 in Amsterdam. This is videotape number K1, the opening keynote address, The Other Side of Information Security.
Who's going to give you our first keynote speech. My intent of the keynote speeches are to make them a little bit more broad and sort of set the tone for the conference, get you thinking on a sort of broader issues, and then you'll spend the rest of the day kind of heads down in more technical and topic-specific areas. So let's give Wilco a warm round of applause and let him start it off. I should have had a, sorry?
Okay. Well, again, an applause without having said anything. That's a good start. Thank you very much. See if I can hook up this thing. Okay. Okay. This is not good. Sorry. This is okay. This is okay. This is okay. Oh, I keep it in my head, no problem. Okay, first of all, thank you very much for your attendance and welcome to the Black Hat briefing in Amsterdam. As Jeff already told you, normally Black Hat is, well, a rather technical conference. That's what we're here for. But there are some other issues in information security as well. That's the reason why I coined my title of the presentation, The Other Side of Information Security. Just to give you, in a nutshell, what is the other side of information security all about? I stress that it's a nutshell. It's because of time constraints. We can spend the whole conference like Black Hat on this issue. We don't do it today, maybe in the future. But I just want to give you an overview of the other side of information security. Who has a watch? Okay, or Diederik, do you have a watch? No, okay. Can somebody give me a signal when I'm about 15 minutes before arrival, so to speak? Because I have the tendency to broaden a little bit and then I have to get time to come back to the main track. Okay. What are we going to talk today? First of all, I'll give you a short introduction why the other side of information security should be an issue, from my perspective. Second, then I will go a little bit deeper in, okay, if you talk about the other side of information security, what are you talking about anyway? I will slightly say something about business and risk assessment. Most people of you, I presume, know risk assessment already because of your professional judgment, because of your jobs. Maybe it's more technical, but still you know what risk assessment is. So I will not spend too much time on that, but I will give you some hints and tips that you should take into account when you do a risk assessment in organizations as well, and I think maybe you can use it as well. Then I will say something about security policies and procedures, following security standards, security awareness, and then finally I will try to give you an insight where the organizational part meets the technical part. I mean, it's not something that is slightly, or is totally different from each other, it's complementary. And I will show you how that works. It's very, very high level, I have to admit that. Again, it's because of time restrictions, but I want to give you an idea. Okay, if you talk about the organizational issues, where, at what moment hits the rubber the road, so to speak. Okay, I don't like this. Okay, good. Am I understandable this way? Yes. Good, fine, this is better, I think. First of all, if you talk about organizational issues, then I want to talk about 4 fundamental questions that are related directly to information security. Then I will talk about components of what is a total security solution, what is a trend in the market, a very important one. Then I will share my ideas about what I developed during my work, what I call a security triangle. It's not that I have the wisdom, not at all. By the way, what I tell you here is, for me, fully open for discussion and questions. I mean, please let me finish my keynote, but during the breaks, during dinner or reception, if you have something to share with me or you just disagree, no problem. This is just my idea how I look to information security. Okay. If you look at 4 fundamental questions, most organizations ask the first question like, how should I protect? It is a relevant question, but it's not the first question. More important to ask first, from my perspective, is why should I need protection at all? Why should I bother about information security? I mean, why should I hire technical guys to strip my firewall, to implement an intrusion detection system, to do some crypto stuff for me? Why should I do that? Why should I pay you? There must be a reason for this. I will come back to this question. Second question is, given the fact that I know that I need protection, how difficult will it be to protect? I mean, it's very interesting to implement a full-blown secure infrastructure if you want to, with all state-of-the-art technology. However, if you do not have people in your organization who do understand anything of it, it's very, well, it has some risk to do that. Another issue, for instance, is if you are dependent on third parties, for instance, well, all of you work in companies or work as technical engineers or consultants for companies, I think many of you have seen already that there is direct connection for remote control by, well, the big companies. So because of dependency on third parties. So you need a dependency on a third party because you don't have the knowledge, that's one. Second of all, those companies have, if you don't do it the right way, direct access to your system, so there's a risk also. I will come back to this as well. This is what I call the constraints. Okay, then the question comes down, what and against who should I protect? Then it's better to ask the fourth question, how should I do it? So first of all, I ask myself the question, why should I protect? How difficult will it be? Against what and against who? That's clear to me now. Okay, the fourth question is, how am I going to do it? If you look at a total security solution, for my part, it consists of 2 main components, technical and organizational. I elaborate a little bit on organizational because, well, that's the focus of my keynote. You see there other circles as well, like assessment, policies, procedures, awareness, and legal. I will come back to that, not on the legal part, but if you look internationally speaking, if you look at the legal issues around information security, there is a lot to talk about. First, we have the crypto stuff. Now we have the Millennium Act. I refer to the e-book crack. I refer to the DVD crack, which cannot be published because of this attention point, let's put it this way. But also from an international point of view, like for instance digital signatures, how are you doing? Technically speaking, we think we know what we are talking about. However, from a legal point of view, there are a lot of issues that has to be resolved. I will not go too deep into this stuff, first of all, because I'm not a lawyer, and second, I don't have the time for that. Some of you noticed, if not all of you, the 2 numbers at the bottom of the slide, 20%, 80%. What does it mean? It means the following. If you look at the total security solution, my statement is that 80% is organizational stuff, 20% is technical stuff. Does that mean that if you look at the workload, that the workload is also 20-80? No, not at all. Oh, not at all. I mean, technical stuff can be very, very complicated. It can take 90, maybe 95% of the total amount of work. I mean, talk about work effort, talk about workload. However, if you look at the components, it's my experience that 80% is all organizational stuff. I mean, not only policies, procedures, the stuff here, but what do you think about the organization itself? Do they have a security officer? Do they have a security administrator? How about the hierarchy of those departments in the organization, etc., etc. Therefore, 2080. Okay, what is the current trend or shift in the market? What you see in most organizations is that security is considered, as they put it in in this way, more and more as part of the normal business process. Like you have, when you go to a hotel, or well, let's put it another way. When you go to an organization and you come to work there, you expect a room. You expect maybe a car, you expect a telephone, you expect a laptop or whatever. You expect that your salary will be paid at the end of the month. All kinds of normal business processes. So security, that's my point of view, will go from something special, something that they call sometimes rocket science, to just an ordinary business need, just another facility, nothing more, nothing less. That does not mean that it will be trivial. Mind you, it's not trivial. The point I want to make is that management, and maybe especially management, should be aware that when they are thinking about their business processes, that they think about security. How many times didn't you encounter the fact, yeah, we want to have an electronic transaction system across the internet, full-blown state-of-the-art technology, and then there's something that they call security. We have to take care of that. So what you see now is that security, instead of afterwards, when the project is, well, tend to go live within one day, well, we have to think about security. You will see a trend that it's shifted more to the front of the project. Okay, I want to stress the third point. Does this mean that technology is dead or something? No, not at all. But again, the focus will be more on organizational. And I will show you that when you have the organizational issues in place, that the technical parts will follow by themselves. Okay, however, given this trend, most organizations just don't know how to do it. They think about it, they talk about it, but if you really ask, do you have a methodology or do you know what you're talking about anyway? Most of the organizations, they want it, but they just don't know how to do it. Focus of my keynote is to give you some hints and tips and some references how you can do it. That's the way how I do it, and it's just my idea. I know it works because I've proved it in practice, but I want to share it with you. But again, it's just a way of doing it, okay? Shall we wait to pick up the call? Okay. Security triangle. When I worked for, I have some background in the banking world. I had the opportunity to think with some of my colleagues about security in more depth, from a more abstract theoretical way. And we ask ourselves this question. If you have to mention 3 fundamental components that have to be in place, otherwise security will never be the way it should be. Okay, what I mean about this? Think about yourself, think about 3 security issues that should be in place in any organization, otherwise security will never what it will be. Okay, again, this is just with what we thought about it. We can disagree on this, no problem, but this is what we came up with. First of all, security assessment and policies. So risk assessment, business and policies. This is key in organization. This also is in line with the current trend. This is very important in organizations. Mind you, policies does not mean that we only talk about general, high-level or organizational issues. When we come down to the technology, I will come back to that later, I talk about system security policies and I talk about the real bits and the bytes of technical security settings on systems like operating systems, firewalls, database, application settings. That's also included in a policy. This is a very important one as well, security awareness. You may have a wonderful security architecture infrastructure, you may have a lot of policies, you may have the most wonderful risk assessment in your life. If there's no security awareness, so if there's no mindset in the mind of the people, it's not going to work. I don't have to explain it to you because this is what we are fighting about in the world, so to speak. This is why we say security is an issue, okay? So I will not elaborate on this at this time, later. And then this is a technical part, cryptography. This is not in line what Bruce Schneier always say. Remember that his book Applied Cryptography in 95, 96, I think it was, that he said cryptography is the holy grail. In his book Secrets and Lies he comes back to that issue. Cryptography is just a tool, but it's a very important tool. If you look at cryptography, where it's being used used all over the place. Again, I don't have to explain that to you, you know all about it. But it's an important issue. So what you see is that 60-70% of this triangle is again organizational issues, and a very important one is a technical issue, is the cryptography. Good. Good. Coming down to information security. If you look at information security, that it's not on itself. It has all relations to all other domains. Just to give you a quick overview, you have the business requirements, and central in the business requirements is information technology. I assume here that information security is a strategic, but it can also be supported. First of all, IT, of course, has relations to a physical environment. Okay, where are the servers being stored? Where are the backups being stored? etc. How's the documents being protected? Are there lockers, etc., etc. Environmental, what about temperatures in the computer room, heat, all the kinds of stuff. Human issues, that's security awareness. Organizational issues, policies, procedures, administrative, and legal. All these domains have their own security requirements. Again, I cannot elaborate on the system security policies, but if I work on system security policies, all these domains come back. I talk about physical security, I talk about environmental security, about document security, about operating system security. So all this stuff comes down. So if I talk about security, I talk about all these domains. And I want to show with this picture just that there are a lot of interrelations between those domains, especially IT, which is in the middle, with the other domains. Okay, this is some introduction. Now we're going to get to the real work. The first step, meet the parents. What do I mean by that? Meet the parents is go to the management of an organization. Do not just go to the IT manager, because that person may be authoritative, may know his stuff, but most of the time he is, and I don't, it's lower in the organization than you need to. Because if you really need security, you need backup. And you need backup in the sense of money, resources, time, and that has to be decided by the upper manager. The upper management have to be formally stressed that they support information security. I will come back to that. So, why do I say meet the parents, meet the management is because they decide about security. They don't want to do it. I mean, how many organizations just see it as a hot potato that has to be thrown away? Why is that? Is it because they hate it? No. I think it's because they just don't know what to do with it. They know it's important, but they just don't know how to deal with it. It's improving, I have to admit, and I'm glad, but still, it is the main issue. Again, they should back up and support the security, so they have to come up with resources. They have the authority to decide, and very important, and maybe I have to put it in the first place, is they are end responsible. They are end responsible for the organization as a whole, also for information security. It's their ass that's on the line, so to speak, when something happens. You know, in organizations we have what we call system owners. Those are people who are responsible for the system itself, including security. Most of the time this should be management and not some secretary or whatever. Okay. When everything goes okay, there's no problem. If everything goes according to plan, nobody talks about it, and all is doing fine. But especially when things are going wrong, then this kind of issues are very important. Good. So, okay, how do we get insight about what's important about security, who has authority, etc.? What we do is, what I normally do, I have to say, I perform a business and a risk assessment. So, business assessment is, remember the first question, why should I need protection? First of all, discuss the stakes. What's at stake, so to speak, when something happens with information security? Do we have financial loss of clients, legal pursuits? I don't know, but the management has to decide, okay, this is what I'm really scared about. If this happens, then I do not sleep tonight. So, what are the stakes? Also, discuss different types of information. When a company just has public information is information, as I define it, where there is no security requirements like confidentiality or integrity. So just like information all over the place. Why do you need protection? Maybe availability could be an issue, but for the rest, I don't know. But if you talk about, for instance, confidential information, company critical information, privacy information, then it becomes an issue. So depending on the type of information you got in your organization, different security measures could be necessary. Discuss the security requirements. CR stands for confidentiality, integrity, availability, and R, non-repudiation. I presume that you know all the security requirements, but again, stress in the company, are there confidential issues, yes or no? For instance, if I have a confidential information system and it's being broken or it's being hacked, that has an impact on the stake company image. It can have an impact on loss of clients, etc., etc. So maybe an interesting thing is, if you talk about security requirements, availability, one of my working areas is the Middle East, and I had a discussion with the largest telecom operator there, and I told him, one of my questions was, are there human lives at stake in your business process? And he looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, are there human lives at stake? So, in other words, if your process is not working, that is providing telecommunication services, is it possible that human lives are at stake? He said, yes, it happened in the past that there was a heavy accident and that the mobile communication was not available. So, the ambulance could not be called. There was no leased line or fixed line in the neighborhood, and that person died because he could not be helped. So, in the medical world and the telecommunication world, this question may be valid, but for other organizations not. But just to give you an idea that we also talk about these kind of issues. Okay. And also discuss what I call more strategic questions, like what is the replacement value of information technology? What do I mean by that? I mean, for instance, if there is a heavy crash, everything burns down. How long does it take you to build it up again, and what does it cost you? For instance, if you look at telecommunication operators, they have a big investment in information technology. There are a lot of complex infrastructure, so if that's blown away, it takes them a lot of time to rebuild it. Another interesting question is targets. If the company itself is not the target of hacking, could the company be used to, for instance, in the sense of the denial of service attack, to attack other people? Or could it be used not to hack the organization itself, but to make the lives of some person miserable, for instance? So, if you talk about targets of hacking, it's not only the organization as a whole. There can be one specific person that could be hacked. There can be one specific process that could be interesting. And, okay, is IT supporting or strategic? Okay, what I want to say with this slide is, when you talk about why should I need protection, talk about these kind of issues. Okay, and talk with it and with the management. Okay, how difficult will it be to protect? That's what I call the constraints. It's fine to implement a security infrastructure, but if the management says it may only cost 5% of the total IT budget, then you may have a financial constraint. Another interesting constraint is, in Saudi Arabia, checkpoint is not allowed. We can discuss whether firewall is a good product or not, but checkpoint is not allowed in Saudi Arabia. Why? Because it's from an Israeli company. So they use raptors. It's a constraint. It's more a political constraint, but it's a constraint. Well, internal knowledge. I mean, what's the problem with monitoring your information systems? The problem is that, first of all, if you want to do it correct, you have to do it 24/7. Second of all, you need people with the right skills. They are very scarce. So, instead of just yelling, we need an IDS system, think about it again and think if you really want it. I mean, it's no problem to implement an IDS system within a couple of hours. Yes, I exaggerate a little bit, I know, sorry for that, but conceptually speaking, it's just a minor issue, so to speak. But then it starts. I mean, if you implement just Snort, okay, it runs in a couple of hours, you do some calibration, it takes you 2 or 3 days maybe, then it runs, okay? And then it starts. Then it had to be follow-up, incident, escalation procedures, etc., etc. That's what most organizations is lacking. What's lacking in most organizations. Okay, go a little bit faster now. Okay, so that was the business assessment. The second part is risk assessment. That's the third question. Against what and who should I protect? Perform your risk assessment. I will not go into details about risk because I assume that you know about it. However, I want to stress, be aware of terminology. If you look at this risk assessment field, then sometimes the terminology, well, I think it's quite normal within IT, but different. Risk identification is, what are the risks? I do not say anything about the probability that they occur, but what are the risks, like unauthorized disclosure of information, unauthorized access to information, unavailability of systems, etc., etc., okay? I'm talking about risk assessment when I give the risk a value. In other words, the probability that unauthorized access to my system is, I consider that medium to high because, okay, and then you come up with certain values. Remember that a risk itself is built up by a threat, a damage, and a vulnerability. So I may have the threat unauthorized access to my systems, but if I have the good security in place, the potentiality will be very low. So if you combine all these issues, then the risk at the end can have a low value. Risk management is the fourth question is, okay, given the fact that I know the risks, given the fact that I know how high, medium, or low they are, how should I protect them? What kind of security countermeasures should I implement in my organization? That's what I call risk management. And risk analysis at the end is the whole stuff together. So risk assessment plus risk management. For instance, the ISO mentions risk analysis as risk assessment. Just so at the end of my presentation, I give you links and books to read if you are interested in this subject. So be aware that, for instance, if you read the ISO 13335, which is about general issues of information security, and they talk about risk analysis, be aware that they talk about risk assessment. If you look at the British standard, another standard I will talk about in a minute, the British standard talks about the disaster recovery plan, while they should talk about the contingency plan. I'm not going to elaborate on this, but I just want to give you the idea that the terminology sometimes differ and that you can be confused, that you thought, hey, I was thinking I read something about risk analysis, now they talk about risk assessment, what's going on? So be aware of this. Good. Some attention points for risk assessment. There are different risk assessment and analysis methodologies, okay, that's for sure. But be aware that you have very general, so very high level risk assessment methodologies, which can be useful if you want to do a quick scan, or very detailed, like CRAM, used by most of the time by the military, is very, very detailed. And then you talk about, okay, what is the risk of unauthorized disclosure to system A? I calculate that on 0.65, whatever that means, okay? That comes back to the second issue. Sometimes it's difficult to determine the value. Look at the 11th of September. I think there was, maybe if you ask the right people in the CIA or in the airline companies, that they have calculated the probability that a flight would, an airplane would fly into the World Trade Center. But nobody has realized that it would happen. Maybe some people thought about it, but they thought, well, this will never happen. It happened. So the value maybe of this risk was 0. The damage was very, very, very big. So at the end, we are talking about a real risk. Okay. Third, make sure that you have the right people to talk to. First of all, who know the business process, who really can say something about the risk assessment. And second of all, who have authority to decide. Who can say, I say this risk is low, medium, or high, and this is how we're going to do it. This is more from an effective point of view, but very important. What's my time left, sir? Okay. So I talked about the business and the risk assessment. After that, first things first, the CSP, or the corporate security policy. This is where it all starts. The corporate security policy is what I call a formalization of the security strategy and objective. So by performing a business and a risk assessment, I know why should I need protection, how difficult it is, against what, against who, and how I will do it. So I can define a security strategy and how we are going to implement all the countermeasures organizationally and technically speaking. So if you look at such a document, it's rather high level. To give you an example, this is just a sample one. For instance, if you look at the first statement, it says, I underlined it, management will therefore formally stress security. So this is a statement from the management in the corporate security policy. It's being signed by the corporate, it's being signed by the management, and it's being communicated within the organization. Here, it also says we take countermeasures, or we have security policy to protect the confidentiality, integrity, availability, and accountability items. Data and assets will be classified. I will come back to that, but it will be classified according to a specific policy. In other words, what kind of assets do we have, and what's the criticality of those? Well, I can go down, and we will create a corporate security officer to work with. We will create a corporate security committee who is responsible for all issues at corporate level, so management board. we will prepare a business continuity plan and a disaster recovery plan. So the only thing, the reason why I show you this is this is how a corporate security policy can look like. You see, they are general, high level, no technicalities at all, but this is a document maybe of a few pages, signed by the management, backed up by the management, and this is to give you a start to go for your information security. Okay? So the first thing you can ask when you go to an organization and they talk about security, ask them the 4 fundamental questions. Ask them about, do they have a risk assessment methodology? Do they know what risk analysis is? And ask them about the corporate security policy. Most of them will just say, well, we don't have it, we don't know. Okay, good. Security policies. On one side, the corporate security policy is the root, and it's very high level. But we have to come down. At the end, we have to come down to the technical stuff, okay, to some extent. So therefore, we also have what we call system security policies. The system security policy consists of different parts. The first one is the general description of the information system itself. It's what we call an ID card. We can discuss what is an information system. For me, an information system can be anything. It can be just this laptop. It can be just a database. It can be a whole computer room. It's flexible for me. So it's what the customer defines as an information system. It gives you flexibility. Then you can talk about security around the information system. Then I talk about, for instance, physical security, document security. I mean, for instance, what do you do with confidential documents? Do you lock them, or do you just lay them on the desk when you leave the company? I'm talking about environmental security. So every security issue around the information system. Then I talk about security on the information system. So then I talk about accountability, segregation of duties, etc., etc. And finally, you're coming down to the technical security settings. So if you look at the system security policy, I think most of it maybe consists of the last one. Okay, how do we strip Unix? How do we strip Firewall 1? How do we strip Oracle? What technical security settings can we implement on application level? Very important. Other important policies besides system security policies are asset classification. So to classify, what kind of assets do we have? An asset is a resource within the company that has some value. For instance, it's needed because otherwise I cannot run my business. Or an asset can be critical because it represents a very big amount of money, for instance. Malicious software policy, well, about viruses, ActiveX, etc., etc. So how do I deal with malicious software? I mean, if you now go to a company and you say you have to disable Java, Java applets, ActiveX code, etc., etc. Most companies will have problems with that because of the way how they use Java or the way how Java is used across the internet. So you have to find a way, okay, if you want to do it this way. That's what you define in the malicious software policy. Okay. There are a lot of other policies. I have not the time to talk about it here, but the first policy after the corporate security policy you have to think about is the asset classification. Because the asset classification policy gives you a good overview of what are the real critical issues here. What are the real critical assets, so that I can spend my time first to secure the critical assets and then go down to other stuff as well. Some hints or tips, or how you call it. Make sure that the policy is supported by the system owner. I told you the system owner is the end responsible for the system. So the system owner should support the policy in a formal way. Avoid the ivory tower syndrome. I've seen lots of companies that have some security department as a staff department somewhere in the organization, and they just go to the people and say, this is the policy. Why? Because I say so. It's not the way how it works. What you should do is develop the policies together. So create a group of representatives of different environments, for instance, IT, management, and end users, and the security department itself, of course. And talk about the issues, talk about what is their concern. It has all to do with the backup also from the user side. So avoid this. Again, the policy should be clearly communicated. This is also one of the main problems for security. Just communicate. It has nothing to do with security. It has all to do with how people communicate to each other. Very important. And don't forget that, please. It should be useful and pragmatic. if you just come up with a theoretical, abstract model of security, it's nice to talk about when you have some beers. And it can be useful in practice as well, because it can give you a starting point. But to make security workable, or it should be pragmatic. People should, when they read it, they should think, aha, a kind of aha-erlebnis. Ah, yes, I understand, now I understand. And then they all tend to use it. Good. Security procedures, simple. Who is doing what, why, and when? Okay, this is the procedure. Okay, the most simple procedure I know in an airplane is when the pilot has landed, he says, cabin crew, manual, and cross-check, please. Just open the doors, cross-check, that's it. It's a procedure of 2 lines. It's a procedure, okay? So procedures can be just 2 lines, can be a whole book, but again, make it practical and make it clear and consistent, okay? Well, some important procedures are boarding process. What I mean by that, it's not a boarding process of the airplanes, but it's inboarding, reboarding, outboarding, or how do you manage your users on the systems? Inboarding, new people are coming along, okay, they have to be implemented. Reboarding is they shift of different departments, different functions within the organization. And outboarding is they leave the company. Just if you have the opportunity and just look in the system for what I call orphan accounts, or accounts that are created there but of which use are a long time left the company. A lot you will find. Incident and escalation, also a very important one. When everything goes okay, nobody talks about incident, nobody talks about escalation. It's all doing fine. But when something happens like a virus or a fire, whatever, there should be a formalized way how to proceed. Okay? Backup and recovery. Most companies have something like this. But what they do is they make a backup, store the backup besides the server in the same room, attention point. And second of all, they hardly test whether the backup has been succeeded. Yes, maybe the program itself, the backup program says backup completed, what does it say? I know you can have rewrite checks, etc., but still, it's better to sometimes, for instance, once per week, once per month, it depends on the situation, just to restore the backup tape in a test environment to see if it's really on the tape. When I worked for the bank, it was Fortis Bank, Mace Pearson, which is a private bank. We have worldwide companies in the tax area, so to speak, and one of them was Curacao. And what happened is that they made the backups, the system crashed. They tried to restore the backup tapes. It was in November a few years ago, and they didn't work. They tried October, they didn't work. They tried September, they didn't work, and it all went down to March. Okay? So be careful about this. Another one is very important, is change in configuration management. This is a really, really, really important one. The people among you who know ETL, they should know about this, and they know that change management it's all about changes. Changes can be just, just changes, just do it. Just load the new patch. I don't care, see what happens. Or do it in a formalized way. Most of the IT problems relate to this issue, that changes are just being implemented without being tested, without being improved, whatever. A lot of shit. Okay, security standards. Are we on our own? I'm talking about the risk assessment. I'm talking about the policies. I'm talking about countermeasures. The question is immediately, are we on our own? No. Fortunately, we have all kinds of standards out there. Like you have, if you go to the internet and you query how to strip an NT machine, if it's possible, then you will find all kinds of documents about NT security. You will find it for Linux, you find it for BSD, you find it for whatever. Okay, for firewalls, it's all out there. So you have baseline standards that you can use. The same for this. We have lots of standards that you can use. A standard for me is just a set of best practices. Because there are a lot of people who have thought about it and they think, okay, this is the best way to do it. It can be a good starting point and prevent you to reinvent the wheel. However, and I want to stress this, however, be careful not to implement the security standard just in the blind. Because if you do that, it's like going to a shop, you want to buy a car and you say to the salesman, just give me a car. What? Just give me a car. It says to cost 40,000 guilders or $20,000. Just give me a car. Without realizing what I'm going to do with the car. Do I go to do some shopping? Do I want to win a race? Do I want to go on holiday? Do I have to go to the desert? Whatever. So first of all, ask yourself questions about, again, I come back to the business and risk assessment. What do I need? Okay, and then take a standard and say, okay, I can use this, I can use this, I can use this, etc. That's one of my, quote, critics on the British standard is, these are all well-known standards. I think some of them are just freely available, like NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, has a handbook you can download, EITF. You can download all kinds of stuff, common criteria you can download. The British standard is now, since January this year, a ISO standard. And this is an important note. Why? Because now it has some, how shall I put it, some status or some reference, so to speak. If you talk about a standard and you say it's ISO, then it's formalized, so to speak. However, most organizations now try to get British standard compliant, or I have to say ISO standard compliant. The risk you run with this process is, if you just implement the British standard, or if you just want to comply to the British standard, that it's possible that you do more than you should do, or you can also do less than what you should do, because the British standard is, after all, a set of best practices. It's a good set of best practices, but it is just a set of best practices. So you have to realize whether this set is appropriate for your environment. So, again, I think you should come back to what should I implement, what kind of protection should it need, and then look at the standards and say, okay, I can use this part, I can use this part, I can use this part. Okay? Security awareness. This is the most critical success factor of information security. I mean, it's all about a mindset, and it should be at any level in the organization, from the top management until, well, the reception, so to speak. And the last line I put it in because I think there's a strong relation with psychology. When I have to do security awareness in an organization, I think I hire a psychologist, because it has all to do with the mindset of people. How do people react? Why do they respond the way they do? It's all about the brain stuff in our head. Okay. Given the time, I think I have just a few minutes left, so I come down to the last issue of my presentation. Where East meets West, here it's where organizational meets technical. Okay, these are high-level examples. Again, I can elaborate more on this, but not now. I talked about the corporate security policy. For instance, the corporate security policy says the accountability principle has to be guaranteed. Accountability means every user is responsible for his own actions on the system. Okay, I say, but then we have to do something. Then we have make sure that every user authenticate him or herself on the system. And in my authentication policy, I choose to use strong authentication. Okay? The question is, what is strong authentication? You define that in the policy, and then you come back to the countermeasure. Okay, in order to do that, we are implementing tokens, for instance, RSA tokens. So from high level, you come down to technical stuff. Another point, example is, for instance, in the corporate security policy, there's a statement that information across untrusted networks, whatever untrusted networks is untrusted, but should be protected. Okay, then I go back to the cryptography policy and I say, okay, for this we use hermetic encryption, and the statement is at least 128 bits, so preferred choice is triple dashed with 3 different keys, not 2. Okay, and the countermeasure is, okay, I buy some hardware encryptors that I put on the gates of my network, and that's where all the stuff is being done. So the fact that there is a hardware encryptor at the gateway of a network, according to some specifications, like it's FIPS 140 compliant, it should support triple dash, it should support this and this and this, is because from higher level, it all comes down to the statement that information across untrusted networks should be protected. So there's a reason why there is a hardware encryptor. There is a reason why we use tokens. Last one. For instance, in the business process, electronic transactions, there are high security requirements for integrity and non-repudiation. Okay. What are the risks? Unauthorized change of transaction, denying or sending. Good. So what are we going to use? Digital signatures. Crypto policy again says we use RSA, minimal key length at least 1024 bits. So again, implementation of a kind of PKI or digital signatures in this sense is because we have some risks, and those risks are risks because we have some security requirements. So here you see that all comes down again together. Okay, this finalizes my presentation. I have 2 slides to show you. Again, this presentation will be made available online. The reason why it's not in your procedure is because I developed it yesterday night, so sorry for that. But these are useful links. Just take a look at it, especially the last one is a very interesting one, the SSE CMM. Maybe some of you know the capability maturity model. They extended this to security. So the capability maturity model gives you a growth phase, how you do with your information technology in organizations. They have mapped that to security, interesting. The NIST is interesting. ISACA is for the COVID, and BSI Global is for the British standard. So if you're interested in this, just take a look at these websites. A lot of information is freely available. The British standard is not freely available, but it's just, I think, $30 or $40. It's, well, for free, so to speak. It's not free in the sense of free, as we talk about free sources, etc., but it's relatively speaking, it's free. Last one, some reading stuff to fill on winter nights is, well, these issues. So if you're interested in this, just take a look at it and try to see if it fits. Okay. To finalize, I hope that I give you, again, in a nutshell, what the other side of information security was all about. Well, it's about assessments, it's about policies, procedures, standards, etc., etc. So, be aware that there is an other side. I assume that you were aware of it, but I hope that I give you a little more detail about what is this other side, and I hope that you can have advantage with it. And I'm looking forward to questions or discussions, maybe not now due to the time, I don't know, or during the break, whatever, to discuss these issues. So, thank you very much for your attention. Are there any questions or discussions you want to start up? I don't know, Jeff, what's next, to be honest? No questions? So, or you understand it or you find it just boring. I don't know. Okay, then I think we start with the next track, whatever that is.